everyone, my name is Rachel and today we're going to be talking about religion again. So today I found another YouTube channel of a Christian woman who, she makes some nice videos, some nice vlogs and stuff. She seems really nice. And this video in particular, I don't actually have any kind of issues with it as such. Like, I don't have any kind of like moral or ethical issues. Like, even though I don't agree with her beliefs, like I don't think they're harmful or anything. I just thought it would be a nice video to kind of give us a little bit of a stepping stone into talking about some power theories in the context of religion and religious leadership. So in terms of like religious leadership, we're talking about when people believe that God himself is a leader within religions. We're talking about people like priests and rabbis and other people like that. And we're talking about the people who are religious and that people turn to for guidance or for learning or whatever. So this even includes some of the YouTube vloggers and bloggers about Christianity, some of the big religious kind of philosophers and theologians and the ones who believe and want to tell everyone else to believe. So this does include people like William Lane Craig and Ken Ham. These people do have power, and whether you like them or not, they do essentially have leadership roles. So we're going to be talking about all this sort of stuff today. The video in particular that I'm using to kind of like give this topic a little bit of context is called How to Give Your Life to God. And it opens with this.
Okay, you've clicked through this video. You're here today and you want to know more about what it means to give your life to God. Some people call this getting saved or being born again or surrendering. There's so many different names.
Now, I thought it might just be kind of like a fun, interesting little thing to note here as a former English Lit student, that I find the choice of wording here pretty interesting. Now, this isn't meant to be some, aha, see what they did moment. This is just a, hey, I thought this was interesting and might be worth talking about kind of thing. But notice the kind of words they use here. So you've got give your life to God, you've got getting saved, you've got being born again, and you have surrendering. Now, getting saved is definitely one of those phrases that plays on your fears a bit, which is something I'm going to talk about in a lot more detail later on in this video. But this idea of being saved, it definitely conjures up some pretty positive images and suggests there is this saviour, this one single being who can help you and who you'll then feel compelled to be eternally grateful to. But at the same time, the fact that you have to have something to be saved from is a pretty scary concept, right? Being born again as a phrase, it's pretty positive. It makes it all sound new and fresh and exciting. It sounds very clean, I think, which is maybe why some people are drawn to that. On the other hand, the phrase giving your life to God implies that there's a choice there. Implies you'll get those warm, fuzzy feelings in your tummy that you get when you give someone a really awesome present. While surrendering, on the other hand, isn't such a positive word. It kind of implies weakness or hopelessness to me, so I find that pretty interesting. I think it would be very interesting to look at the different contexts where each of these phrases is used. You know, from a language perspective, I think it's a very interesting thing, the fact that this one idea has many different names. I think it would be interesting, like I say, to look at them in context and look at the different types of people that they target with different language.
The first thing you need to know is that all of us as human beings, every single one of us have done something wrong, and God calls that sin. The second thing you need to know is that sin, those wrong things that you and I have done, that sin separates us from God. It drives a wedge between us and God. The wrong things we've done are things that God can't just overlook because he's in the mood to. They separate us from our Father God.
Okay, so this video just goes straight in there with the fear-mongering. So I don't know how much you guys know about me, but my background, like career-wise, is in digital marketing. It's where I've trained, it's where I've worked, it's where I focused a lot of my studies at uni. I've said it before, but one of the biggest techniques that I find that, you know, if you compared religion to a business, one of the biggest techniques that they use to try and convince you that their particular religion and belief system is right is fear. Now, in business, to understand fear, you have to understand power structures and leadership roles, okay? And this kind of comes in two parts. The first part is to look at it in the context of leadership and your kind of followers that you already have. So in business, this might be your employees. In religion, this will be the people who are, say, already Christian or already Muslim or already following whatever religion you're trying to sell them. The second thing to look at is from a kind of more consumer behavior perspective. So this is targeting the people who, you know, it hasn't been sold to them yet. They're not convinced. These are, you know, perhaps the atheists. These are the people who follow a different religion to yours. these are the ones that you're still trying to convince. So one of the big theories in power and leadership that comes up often, a lot of people talk about, is French and Raven's 5 forms of power. It sometimes has a couple of different names, but that's one of the most common. They first came up with this in 1959, and it's still widely accepted today, even though they have added to it over the years, and some people have made some slight changes to the theory and built on it and so on. In this theory, they state there are 5 key methods that people can use to retain power over others: legitimate, reward, expertise, referent, and coercive. Now, some leaders may use a mixture of strategies, or some people may focus on one or two in particular. And it's exactly the same for religious leaders, whether it is kind of a god or someone like a priest, a rabbi, a YouTuber, whatever. I'm just going to be kind of grouping all these people together and calling them religious leaders or religious influencers, something like that, okay? So let's look at some examples of where they might use these types of power. Now, I think most religious leaders would say that they themselves and God, which they obviously assume exists, practice legitimate power. Because, after all, God is the all-knowing, all-powerful creator and leader of this universe, right? If people are trying to, be religious leaders, they've obviously been given that power by God, right? So it's all legitimate. They're meant to have this power. It's kind of how the old kings and queens, and even pharaohs, said that they got their powers from God, and that's why their kind of ruling was legitimate. So while people who clearly already believe in the religion would probably follow this and fall for this kind of power and ruling and follow them for those reasons, for the rest of us, we don't believe in a god. At least not yet. So we can throw this one out for now. It's not going to influence us. It's kind of the same with the expert one. The expert method states that you're an expert in the field, you know best, and so people kind of trust you and they're willing to listen to you because they think that you know better than them. Now, a priest, for example, might be an expert on an old book, the Bible. But are they really experts in everything else when it comes to religion? I mean, let's say you have some religious leader who's giving a speech on their views on abortion and they want to convince everyone else that they're right. They might assume they have this expert power because, they know the Bible. But really, if they're not experts on abortion and they're not experts on the biology and the science behind it, I don't really think that we can say they have expert power. So they're not really using this one too much. The next point is reward, and this is really an interesting one. Basically, you convince people to do things for you by promising them a reward in return. Now, if God was real, he might be seen as being able to supply these rewards, because in trade for people following him and worshipping him, he lets them into heaven, right? Putting it very, very simply, but you know what I mean. But he's not real, so I kind of feel like that one doesn't count. And all the other people, like the priests and the lecturers and the speakers and the believers and the rabbis and the whatever, they can try and offer these rewards to people in exchange for listening to them. But when the reward is heaven, the religious leader or influencer, he's not really the one deciding whether you get the reward or not. It is a difficult one. You could kind of argue they use this kind of reward type of power, but not really. Next up, referent power is definitely something that a lot of religious leaders use, particularly cult leaders. It refers to how you can have power and influence over people because they like you, they respect you, they admire you, because you're charismatic. And so this is obviously true of a lot of cult leaders who basically position themselves as a god, And finally, the one I think is most often used by religious leaders and influencers, regardless of if they realize they're using it or not, is coercive. This is based on the belief that if you don't follow them, if you don't go along with their ideas, if you don't essentially give them this power and go along with it, you'll be punished. In the case of religion, you'll go to hell. Now, this doesn't necessarily rely on the punishment being carried out. It relies on the fact that the follower believes that the punishment could be carried out. It's the fear that drives them. It's the belief. So definitely through fear, definitely through some legitimate types of power, definitely through referent power, and definitely to an extent through expert and reward power a little bit. That's how religious leaders and influencers control people who already believe. But what about trying to convert new believers? For that, I like to look at a little bit of consumer behavior theory. And I got one of my good old reliable textbooks out here and had a little look at one of these sections on fear, and I found some pretty interesting stuff. So, a 1991 paper by Tanner, Hurt, and Eppright basically summarised that fear attempts to elicit fear or anxiety by stressing the negative consequences of either an engaging or not engaging in a particular behaviour. By arousing this fear, marketers hope consumers will be motivated to think about the message and behave in the desired manner. So basically, churches do this. They say, hey, this is what we want you to do, this is how we want you to behave, this is who you should be worshipping and when and why and where and how and so on. And they're like, and if you don't do this, you'll probably be eternally punished, you'll go to hell, blah blah blah. It's playing on fears and anxieties, right? Because no one wants eternal damnation, I'm guessing. Now, a lot of different research has been carried out about this over the years. And one of the big criticisms is that fear doesn't really work, not really. When you look at, the warning messages on cigarette packets, it didn't really influence how many people smoked that much. But then more studies were done, and it's found that certain types of fear can influence behaviour. So a 2006 study by, and I hope I'm pronouncing this right, Passin and Sujan, they found that fear appeals that evoke guilt, regret, or challenge can motivate behaviour because they play to feelings of self-accountability that are experienced when the consumer does or does not do something, such as applying sunscreen to avoid cancer, or going to hell if you don't go to church. So, while there was some back and forth for a while about whether this works, whether it doesn't, basically, the stronger the fear, the more likely it is to work. So, saying you'll be in mortal peril if you don't do this, that's a pretty big motivator for a lot of people. A further theory on this that kind of takes it to the next level is called the terror management theory, which says that we develop a worldview of values and beliefs to cope with the terror of knowing that we will die someday, despite our innate impulses towards self-preservation. To avoid being paralysed by anxiety, we may respond to messages that highlight the threat of death by more strongly defending our worldview. So basically it's saying everyone's scared of dying and everyone's scared that, one day that'll be it, it'll be over. And so that can be paralysing to us, but that's why we tend to buy into products like religion, which promises a slightly longer life. It offers us an afterlife, it offers us something else to believe in. It calms our anxiety and stops our fears. It is quite an interesting little thing. I don't want to go into it too much right now because I feel like I am kind of rabbiting on a little bit, but if you have any time, definitely go do a little bit more research, look into it, because it's a very, very interesting topic. And I think the fact that a lot of the time religion is quite subtly playing on your fears, and trying to tell you that only God can save you, is pretty rough, and I think it's something that often a lot of religious people overlook or they assume is like a necessity or something they can't change. Basically, I just think it all sounds a bit rough, to be honest. Anyway, I just wanted to make a quick video, and I'm feeling a little bit stressed because I've got to go and tidy the flat now, and I won't be making videos this weekend because my sister is coming to visit, and I can't wait, and she'll be here I'm going to meet her in 2.5 hours, and I'm very, very excited. Actually, if you're watching this video when I first publish it, when it first comes out, I will be currently at the train station meeting her, and I'm very excited because I love my sister to bits. She's like the best person in the world. But anyway, enough of this. Oh, I'm rambling today so much. Let me know your thoughts on this and everything I've spoken about in this video, and the video I responded to, and my ideas and my ramblings. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. If you've made it through this far, thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it, and I'll see you again soon.